All right, welcome everyone. Today is Wednesday, the 28th of February, 2024, and this is the SIG Cloud Provider office hours meeting. We are a subproject of Kubernetes SIGs, and as such, we follow their meeting guidelines, which basically means please treat everyone as you would expect to be treated, or explicitly so. Please be kind to each other. And if you'd like to talk, please raise your hand and I will call on you. So we'll come back to the bug scrub and triage at the end of the session today, or at the end of the meeting. Does anyone have any provider updates that they would like to give as we get started here? All right, I'm not seeing any hands or anything, so I'm going to guess there are no provider updates, and we will move on to the agenda. Antonio, thank you for joining us, and thank you for raising this. You've got a kind of a big issue here, so I will give the floor to you, and please tell us what's going on.
Yeah, just let me try to provide context with the whole history, right? Like, I don't know when we started with external cloud provider, right? And you helped a lot, and we were able to set up some jobs, right? To have some kind of smoke test. We changed the CI and everything. Everything seemed to go smooth, at least not biggest issues. But lately, a lot of things are starting to pop up, right? My observation is that downstream is, and distros are going like 1 year, 3 releases behind us, right? And so that means that now people is with 127. And now I started to receive these internal bugs and these external bugs and started to connect things, right? And we start to see, some tests start to flake. This one conformance scale test start to flake. And then I started to dig more. Thing asked me, just you can take a look. And I started to dig, and there are some assumptions that are on how the node object is initialized, the change, right? When the kubelet starts and it's an internal cloud provider, it starts create the object and the object is there. You have provider ID, you have these labels. There are a lot of these assumptions, right? And when we move to the external cloud provider, the node is created, this taint to say, oh, cloud provider, go and initialize it for me. And this, okay, just another one delay. This is causing some issues at the scale. There were several fixes for Amazon team and some team at Google to improve this. I think that was sorted out. But there are another additional things that are conventions about what labels are part of the initialization. What is the provider ID value? Is that mandatory? Is it not mandatory? That's not clear from the code base and everything. It seems that all the, or at least most of the load balancer cloud provider integration require this provider ID field. The problem is that current logic depends on asking the cloud provider. If it fails, it seems that the node can go initialize it without the provider ID, and it's never reconciled. So this means that you may have some nodes that are never going to be able to work with a load balancer, or causing these weird issues that I linked in the PR that is the one below. And I know Andrew, Walter, Steve, I don't know the name from the Amazon, were usually the technical people, right? They were developing all this stuff, and I know that they are pretty busy, right? We all have different things, and our upstream bandwidth is less and less. So, for example, I have like this bug that was related to cloud provider. I asked it to cherry pick the person, and the cherry picks are holding there for 2 or 3 months. I don't remember. It's related to the provider ID, right? What I'm trying to say is this thing is starting to leak symptoms of problem, right? And the later one is this big PR that they have to change some of the controller, but again, I had to do reverse engineer. I need somebody to verify. I think that is correct, but I need somebody to validate and to approve. So this is the thing that I'm bringing is the cloud provider to external is risky. All of us that are working on cloud providers that depend on this, this is a heads up. You have internal teams, raise this. This is going to hit customers in the worst scenario because you only see this at the scale, race conditions, weird interactions. So this is a heads up for cloud providers that depend on this. The other one is as community. I mean, I'm asked to put me as approver, right? You know that I know this code and I'm not going to do wrong things with the code. And I'm going to stepping up now. I wanted to get your approval to say, okay, Antonio, just start reviewing and at least we unblock all these things, right? It's cherry picks, it's whatever thing. I'm not going to do nothing crazy. And I think that know the code well. And I wanted to ask because the community asked for you cannot go from nothing to approver directly. But I mean, I think that right now the second contributor. Uh, and the third thing is we need to prepare a plan for maintaining this code, or I don't know. I mean, this is it's what we have. I don't think that we should go to GA with this, right? We are in the beta thing, and the good news is we have testing and we caught it, right? So that's a big relief for me. I know
So
Andrew is there. I need.
can I ask you a question, Antonio?
Yeah, sure.
So you're saying you don't think we should migrate into we shouldn't take the external cloud providers as GA yet. But does that mean that we need to do something in terms of keeping the in-tree provider? Because I think only GCP is left as the only in-tree provider now.
Yeah. No, it's more now. It's more. We now we are in the middle, and there is not turning back here, right? I think that's clear for everybody. We need to move to GA. What I'm saying is, if we move to GA in this current state, we are doing a false impression, right? And it's just not for users; it's for our company. It's this is GA, this is working, and that's what I'm saying is
100%.
I was talking with Teams. Teams, you should be hitting this. And he put me in contact with some engineers. Say, oh yes, we know we hit this. Okay, right, write this so we all fix this. Right? It's better for everybody if we find it. So that's why what I'm saying is we Kubernetes, there is no free people working on this. You need to know about this stuff, especially cloud provider. And this is a heads up for our companies to say, look, we need to take care of this code. This is not a lot of code. This code doesn't change too much, but at least needs, I don't know, two person checking every month for the bugs or the thing. It's just that. I don't want to give the impression that this is done. Is my point, right? This requires some continuous job. It's not a lot of job, but requires continuous job. And to go to GA, we are seeing that it requires more than maintenance, right? It requires all these interactions.
I think Chris has a great question in chat here that maybe you could help pull this apart. Like GCP is the only in-tree provider left, but I think we're seeing problems across other providers that are part of the core code. And I think that's kind of what you're pointing at here, Antonio, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, exactly. So these are not functional bugs. I mean, I'm in GKE. If I was in Azure or I was in Amazon, I will be here with the same page. We are race conditions at the scale. What I'm saying, right? So, I mean, if you worry about the startup latency, this is going to regress you. I know that all of us have. This is OpenShift too. I think that this is vSphere. These three backports. I don't know if it's from Red Hat or from VMware Broadcom. So, not GCP has more visibility because our CI is based on GCP. That's why we detected there, right? That's why I confirmed it with Teams. You need to see this at the scale in your environment in the AWS. And he told me, the engineers told me, oh, we know there are some races. We work around with this. I mean, you can set the flag of provider ID in the kubelet, but I just prefer us as a project to deliver something that works and people doesn't have to live with hacks, because tomorrow there are companies and startups that need to use this code, right? It's just thinking a bit more in the whole ecosystem. Does it make sense, Chris?
Yeah. It seems like we need issues calling out the specific race conditions then.
There's a few issues linked there.
Yeah.
Um,
But in KK for some reason. Oh, right.
Yeah, those ones are living orphan node objects, right? I mean, the normal user is not going to hit this
Well,
because
those are all merged. So
they merge. Okay.
do
No,
we have
this
to
is
cherry
mine.
pick them?
Okay, the cloud provider external address was mine. So the node started with one addresses, and then after a few seconds, the cloud provider came and removed those addresses. So you have your pods that started with one addresses and your pods that started later with another addresses. And that was causing this QP guy that from Isobalen had to change things. I know that OpenShift got hit because of these changes. These are subtle things. What is the thing in English? The die by the thousand paper cuts or something. This is what we have here. It's not that this is terrible. We are going to break Kubernetes. It's exactly death by a thousand cuts. This is the symptom that we have here. And there are
I'm
still
very
things.
appreciative. I'm very appreciative of Antonio clarifying this for us.
Oh, look, Joel is also confirming that this is an issue.
Yeah, like first of all, what you've explained is very clear to me, Antonio. I think the point you made is good. And yeah, +1 to what Bridget just said. Like, thank you again for highlighting this to us. Now, I think the next one, the next part is going to be difficult though, which is like, how do we address this? How do we, I think adding Antonio as an approver probably is a quick fix, at least to help with the cadence. But I think long term, we need to add a new technical lead to the SIG with Andrew stepping out. I think it'd be really helpful if we could have another technical lead who's also interested in kind of being involved in this work. But that's the tough part, right? We need someone who wants to kind of be involved in the work. It can't just be like a side thing, right? Someone has to help with these PRs and whatnot.
It's enough. That's the thing is we need to grow this tier, and I mean there is not much code, right? The thing is not. That's why it's not appealing for a lot of people. I understand this. Nobody's going to build a case on or a career on this. So, well, I mean, this is the problem. We are at KubeCon. I mean, this has been during the last year. We are not going to solve it in this talk, but at least if we start talking, we can at least try to find a solution. We have a quick solution, and I hopefully we meet there in a conference on whatever thing, and we talk about this.
Antonio, I think maybe if we make sure to put a session in the conference on Contributor Summit Day to discuss, cloud provider issues, that might be a good place for those of us right there to kind of gauge the interest from people who might want to participate who are there.
I'm escalating this internally too. I'm trying to find people. So that's the other thing is, if you can find people, I'm happy to. I mean, that everybody reach out to me. I'm happy to spend hours with person explaining things. But it's as you say, you cannot have this as a side project. Somebody has to start owning this.
Right. And
that kind of gets to we've been talking about doing a varied cadence of this meeting. And one of the challenges is time zone wise, we could probably arrange a meeting that works for EU and China pretty well, but not for US people. And that would be a better meeting for our Azure team members who work on this stuff to meet with like Antonio and others, Antonio and Joel, etc. So maybe Mike and I should take that as an action item to start working on getting another cadence to this meeting.
My working hours are weird, and I tend to not get more meetings than necessary. So, but if they are in APAC, So they are in my morning. So they are feel free to reach out. Yeah. And everybody can reach out in the Slack and we set up a meeting, and then we discuss in the channels. As I say, I just came to keep this ball rolling and try to solve this before the release. I don't want to release Kubernetes with this race.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's valuable feedback, and it makes sense to me. Obviously, we're not going to solve this in this meeting right now, but I think we have some steps here to take. Like, one, get Antonio in as an approver in these places where, as he's willing to help us, that would be great. And then two, I think we should send out an email to the Kube dev list just talking about the situation and inviting kind of like a wider discussion to see if we can help, just get more people involved. And then also looking, and I guess this might be again through mailing list or something, to see if we can figure out if we added another meeting time that's more EU or APAC friendly, could we gather more contributors or more collaborators from those regions? Does anybody else have ideas that we should follow up on?
I want to give an advice is with broadcasting opportunities to work, it brings a lot of people enthusiastic, and this code is only, I mean, I hate to say this, but if you are not in the 4 or 5 distros of Kubernetes, it's not likely that you are going to, I mean, you can be great in technical skills, but the feedback of these issues are going to come from these distros. And that's what I'm saying. If you have code base that you are not able to see using it, you usually get demotivated, and after a few months you lose the enthusiasm of, or just the opposite. You had too much enthusiasm and you are not aware of the consequences, and then you got all the just the other way around. All the people, hey, please don't change those things. I know I think that this is a very critical part, at least for everyone that has cloud provided, and it's very sensible.
I mean, yeah, Walter is basically echoing what you're saying in chat, and I agree too, Antonio. And I think probably we have to make that clear when we send this email out. And this is something that's difficult for us because we oftentimes have people come to the SIG and ask us, how can I get involved? I'm looking for a good new issue. And what you're saying is absolutely correct, Antonio. Most of the issues we have are very deep in the stack. They're related to a specific cloud provider. And honestly, most people who are just open source contributors, like they're not necessarily going to have like the context or the desire to dive deep into cloud X to determine if there's some weird hiccup happening. And then how would they resolve it with that cloud provider if they didn't work for cloud provider X? So I think we have to be very clear about some of the challenges around becoming a contributor to SIG Cloud Provider. I think people just have to know these things up front. Let's see what we got going on in the chat here. So it sounds like the Azure Cloud team members are in Shanghai. So that would be definitely having a meeting time that's more APAC friendly could potentially help get them involved. And it sounds like Joel's saying he'd also be interested in talking more.
How about I take the action item of I set up a one-off call just to make sure that we get a chance to have those team members directly discuss this stuff. I set up a one-off call that has an EU and APAC friendly time for it.
Cool.
I'll reach out to people separately to coordinate that.
I will work on a draft email and I will share it with like Bridget and Walter, and maybe I'll just bring it to the next meeting here, see if everyone's cool with it or get a review on it, just to make sure that our language is good and whatnot. All right. This is I mean, this is an important topic and a great one. Does anyone else have comments they'd like to add before we move on?
Yeah, just one thing. I know Alex I'm going to butcher this, Constantinescu, something like that, has done a lot of work on scale and services and health check and stuff. So I'm wondering if Alex might also be interested in getting more involved here.
Does that last name begin with a C or a K?
I will type it out.
Okay, thank you.
So I have one comment, and this, if we want to go as a SIG and say, hey, we think there's a good enough exception, that's fine. But the community membership rules are pretty clear on you need to have been a reviewer for an entire quarter before you can be moved to approver. And so we would be bucking our community standards to do anything else.
Look, this is a escape hatch, emergency button, as you tell me, oh, we don't have any approver or we cannot approve. I don't want to have Marones or approver. I don't have any special interest. I just want to make clear, if there are other approvers that can approve, I'm super happy.
No. I'm not saying let's not move Antonio there. I just want to be very clear that
I don't want to be causing a precedent in the community. What I want to highlight is code freezing is in 2 weeks. And we have this back. I don't know if I got it correctly. I think that I got, but there is a lot of code that is undocumented and some things is. That's why I am raising this emergency, right? There are several cherry picks, and there is this bag. I don't know if we are going to find more, and there are 2 weeks for code freeze. We cannot start doing all these changes after code freeze, and people is going to start merging things.
So do we have, whether it be Walter or Joel or anyone who is familiar enough with the code under discussion, do we have somebody who can take a look at Antonio's stuff?
I am happy to take a look. I don't know whether, sorry, this one, I have been very busy and this one just didn't hit my radar. I'm happy to take a look. Whether or not I feel comfortable with reviewing it, it's a great question.
So maybe that's the first question. We find who, if anyone on the planet, is able to review this code. Hopefully someone.
Yeah, no, hang on. Let's just see which files it is. Provider test, node controller.
If then we need, if then we need someone else to pair with someone and say, okay, yes, this does look good. Let's give it the stamp of approval. And if that's faster than adding Antonio to a file, that seems doable, but we would need somebody to review.
So I I don't want to leave the wrong impression. One, I actually think adding Antonio is a very good idea, right? So I don't want to say I'm against adding Antonio. My thing is how we do it, not if we do it. Let's add Antonio. It's there are 2 ways to do it, and okay, having stepped past that one.
Let's move the approver thing. We don't need approver. Let's work without that, and that's also the problem. Well, let's find the reviewer.
Yeah, I think clearly we do need approvers, right? So I'm looking at this. This is one that traditionally would have been done by Andrew. Andrew tended to do this, but looking at this, I can make time for this, not today, but I can make time for this tomorrow. So I can get a review in and probably get this merged tomorrow if you're okay, assuming there are no glaring problems with it. Tomorrow. But again, I actually think that, you know, Antonio is 100% right. Even if I can do this review, this still speaks to a fundamental problem with the SIG where we do not have enough approvers in depth. So, like, no, please help me fix this. Okay. whether it is Antonio or someone else, like we actually clearly need more approvers here.
Yeah. I think it's like we've got two problems, right? We got the short-term problem, which is like having Antonio as an approver yesterday would be convenient, at least in the window coming up to code freeze here. So either we make Antonio an approver in the short term just so we can get through this phase, or maybe as Chris is kind of suggesting in chat, we have the current approvers just on the lookout for Antonio's thumbs up on a PR that he didn't author that we could then approve very quickly. But then there's the second problem, which is, yes, we need more reviewers. We're not going to solve that before the code freeze. We need to be thinking about that as like a long-term thing as we go into 1.31 or 1.31 and 1.32. Like that has to be a big thing for the SIG to generate those reviewers in that time frame.
Well, there's reviewers, and there are reviewers and there are approvers. And so one thing I would say, the intent of the quoted contributions is that everyone very early should become a reviewer, right? Like it's, the idea is grow with your reviewers as quickly as humanly possible, and then take the good reviewers and turn them into approvers. And so the goal is to get as many approvers as you can, and doing it by growing reviewers as quickly as you can. So I mean, one thing we should absolutely do is make sure that everyone on this call is a reviewer.
Yeah, good point. And well said too. All right, we're at about the halfway point for this meeting. Is there more we'd like to? Yeah, let's add Joel as a reviewer too, please. I'm surprised you're not a reviewer already, Joel.
John, and Bridget, all of you.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next topic unless people would like to keep discussing this. Going in 3, 2, 1. Okay. Thank you again, Antonio. So there is also an issue impacting multiple integrations that is pending review. I guess this is also part of what, okay. So this is what actually needs review then. All right, cool.
Look, I've been doing several things. I think that copy the same thing twice.
Oh, okay.
I split this because I had one big.
Okay.
Yeah, it's this one only. You can close that.
Yeah. Okay. We need to take a look at that. Bridget and Chris, do you want to? You got the next topic here.
Sure. Yeah, it's been really hard carving out time for this, but I appreciate having a little bit of synchronous time in this meeting to kind of go over it, which is Chris and I started an outline with a topic. We started from the description as written, and we found a few places where we kind of needed to change the flow, etc. And then we also, thank you, Antonio. Well, we're collaborating, Chris. But unless you're saying, yeah, there's a lot here that we need to add, which yes, you
Well,
are
no,
100%
I'm not
correct.
saying that. I'm not saying that, but I acknowledge it might be true.
So this is an outline that is mostly now superseded by the link at the top to the deck, which is basically the topics from the outline in deck form. If you can kind of see, like all I did was take all the topics and put them in approximately the right flow order. And at this point, I'm kind of like, hey, there are a few places where we probably should discuss how much detail do we think it's valuable to go into in the overview. And I know that we've had some success in the past, like Joel did a really good walkthrough some gnarly bugs. And so like some of these bugs that we're discussing are some of the, I would say, the challenges that we're running into around moving out of tree, super valuable. Like the earlier bits of this call, super valuable. This is the sort of stuff I think we should probably cover. But like the cadence, I think, and the one thing that I moved from the outline that Chris may have noted is, I think if we pop back up to like slide 3 or 4, I think all right, what's going on with cloud provider? Making a new cloud provider. All right, how do I do that? We had talked in the outline, we had talked about the whole process of making a new cloud provider as kind of like a postscript at the end, but I kind of think giving people context at the beginning, when we say what's a cloud provider, having Chris go into a little bit of detail about making a cloud provider, maybe that's foundational. And so that's kind of my question to the group is like, as we're explaining this flow of stuff to people, I sort of think maybe explaining what making a new cloud provider looks like, not so much as an instructive, like step by step, more as a contextual. This is what's in there. And I think that maybe that matters more, but yeah, I'm interested in people's feedback. Mike.
I'm like a big fan of going a little deeper on some of these things. So I think, yeah, having,
Awesome.
you know, if Chris is willing to talk about like kind of the path to building a cloud provider, I personally think that's interesting. And my observation from previous KubeCons is that I think technical content goes over really well with the audiences. So I think, yeah, kind of like diving past the just the surface level to talk about, you know, what is a cloud provider? What are the pieces of it? What are the kind of things, you know, I think that would be really cool personally.
Okay, awesome. So I like that. I also am gonna look to Almiko, and I know Andrew is not here, but like since this was kind of originally the Almiko and Andrew show, I sort of would love if you wanted to take a thwack at these, you know, this outline of slides and make it a little bit more what you were thinking, because this is a lot of me trying to reconstruct what the intent was and maybe try to come up with some content on the fly late in the game. And so this is kind of a, hey, Mike, want to put an hour on my calendar later this week, but also, or next week, but also please edit these sort of thing. And just let me know which of is it your Red Hat? Like what would be the best one to share it to?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to share it to my Red Hat email, that's totally fine. And yeah, like I can take a look this week and maybe leave some comments on the deck. And then next week, maybe, yeah, if you, Chris, and I wanted to get together for like an hour or something, I'd be happy to kind of, yeah, just brainstorm with you both and just, yeah, talk through any issues that you feel you might be in there now or whatever.
We were talking earlier about the next steps for the SIG and getting better technical code review and, you know, testing of races and stuff. And it seems like if we can figure out what our direction is there, this is the place where we could launch that new direction, right?
Absolutely.
And I'm not
Absolutely.
seeing that in here now, so I'm thinking like that we could do that.
Yeah. And I think like, Chris, I like the way you're thinking about it too, in terms of like, and this is something that I think Bridget talked about too, which I love, which is like Antonio brought these like really crunchy problems to us today, right? And these are things that we know we're going to be looking at in the future. So yeah, I think if we could have, and I guess, you know, this is something that we'll have to brainstorm on, I guess, like if there were a way to have kind of like a little technical section here where you talk about, these are some of the problems that are, you know, like extraction migration is one thing, but these are some of the ongoing day-to-day problems that we see. And these are the problems that we'll see in the future. And these are the type of things that we're looking, you know, to find reviewers and contributors and whatnot. Like that to me sounds like the kind of conversation that would go over well there, especially if you could kind of expose some of these, like I said, really kind of crunchy bugs or whatever.
See, and I don't feel I'm going to be able to do that myself without some help. But the idea of at least dispelling the impression that I feel is sometimes broadcast that this SIG is just about pulling out the internal cloud providers, when really well, and this is me presuming again, I feel like we're gonna keep going and maintain the cloud provider codes, because I don't know that that's always clear with the things I read.
I think I think it is, and I wasn't necessarily like personally, I wasn't necessarily clear on some of this in the past, but I think it's becoming clearer. And we did have a conversation about this. I know, like Walter and Bridget and myself talked about it.
Okay,
Like
cool.
what comes next and whatnot. And yeah, there is still more work to do. And I see Walter's got his hand up, so I'm just going to shut up and let him talk about this.
So I'm going to say something slightly controversial, but I actually agree. So the first thing is I actually think we should have an adult conversation about, do we continue? And if so, what is our role? So let me start with, I think we should have that conversation. I also have opinions, which is we should. I think I'm going to reflect a lot of what everyone else has said. One thing I'll point out is KCM is the thing we don't really pay much attention to, but it is the mirror of the CCM. And it's not, I mean, technically it's owned by SIG API Machinery. So with what I'm suggesting, we should probably go have a chat with them. But I don't think they really want to own the controller manager. And in fact, one interesting problem that we have on our side is that the CCM was forked from the KCM before I even got involved in the project, which tells you how long ago that happened. And it has been an ongoing source of tech debt for us that fixes get merged into the KCM's controller manager code, but not into the CCM's controller manager code, because no effort was made to make the code common. And so I have periodically gone in, made a start on bringing us back up to speed with the KCM's fixes. But I, in fact, think that we should actually have some effort, get to one centralized controller manager, and then the difference between CCMs and KCMs is which controllers they run. I mean, I don't actually honestly understand why we want different controller. I mean, there's an issue of wiring in the cloud provider, which is the big thing that makes the CCM different than the KCM. But honestly, I don't understand why we would want different controller manager code. Like, it should be the same code, maintained one set of fixes, and then it's much easier to do things like think about which controllers run where, and that's really the only distinction.
I think that's a really good point, Walter. This is almost the Jurassic Park problem of just because we can decouple absolutely everything in the world doesn't mean we should. We should keep the things common that should stay common, and figuring out exactly where those boundaries are is the part of the ongoing work of the SIG, in my estimation.
And I think we are, I mean, someone has to keep maintaining the CCM and maintaining, you know, and if we're maintaining the CCM and that is one of our core functions, I think there is something to be said for maintaining the KCM at the same time. I mean, it's going to be a little controversial because it's explicitly the thing that is not cloud provider, but also, Chris, that is an adorable cat.
Yeah, he tries hard.
So I just a couple points of clarification here. Does anyone own the KCM parts of this? Does another SIG own the KCM parts of this now, or do we own them?
API Machinery owns them, but API Machinery owns half of all of Kubernetes. And I don't think they have, I mean, David.
Yeah, but we don't either, right?
What do you mean?
We don't have the resources needed to maintain it either.
Well, so I think there's a distinction, very carefully distinction here, and I'm tap dancing. So what API Machinery will tell you is that they own the controller manager. They do not own the controllers.
Oh.
Right? So every controller should have an owner. We own the CCM code. We own the CCM. We actually legitimately own the controller manager, and that's one of our main things. And we own a few of the controllers in it. And to be fair, API Machinery, like, there are controllers that they spend more time on certain controllers that they own than they do on the controller manager code. So as an example, the garbage collection controller is a very core piece of API machinery, and they absolutely spend a lot of time maintaining that controller. And I am not suggesting we take over those controllers. I'm just suggesting that if the goal is to get to one central controller manager code, that at that point, maybe it makes sense for us to do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it definitely sounds like we need to have a conversation with SIG API machine. Like someone needs to go from SIG Cloud Provider to SIG API machinery and like start having this conversation.
Well, and in fact, it probably makes, given who's involved in this, it makes probably most sense for it to be you and me, Elmiko, because the two people we would need to talk to, or the people we would need to talk to, are Fede, who I work closely with, Joe Betts, who I work closely with, and David Eads, who, of the people on this call, you and I are probably the one who know David Eads the best.
Well, right. Like I could talk to him internally, just like you could talk to the other folks internally. So yeah. And I'm sure Joel would probably be interested in some of this stuff too.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in. I'm well acquainted with David, and yeah, this is an interesting area for me as well.
Okay, so for right now, I'll put an action item down for Walter and I to start the conversation. But Joel, I'd like to sync up with you kind of like out of band because I know your interests and whatnot. So yeah.
Yeah, within OpenShift, this is something that probably I own. So yeah, I should probably get involved in.
Yeah, totally. That's kind of what I was thinking too.
Yeah, I would love to chat with you about this. I mean, we have periodically made CCM closer to KCM, and I would like to just push it over the line and get to one core thing, and that I think it would make everyone's life better.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like especially if these things are all using the same common functionality anyways, we should make this, it improves the state of I mean, like it lifts all boats, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing I will mention, and this, I think if we talk about things, I mean, I don't know if we consider it a solved problem or what, but the other thing that is, I mean, we don't really have code, the cloud providers do, but the other interesting bit that has traditionally been on our plates, at least in an advisory role, is the credential. There's a credential provider piece that is used to get the credentials needed to pull images from a registry. And so we pulled that out of Kubelet, and I think at least several of the cloud providers have their own implementation of this, and it runs as a little binary as a inside the kubelet container. So, and it tends to be cloud provider specific, but in the realm of things we own, this is one of them. And I don't know that we have much expertise because everyone who did this work is outside the SIG at this point. So I'm familiar with the work. I reviewed the work, but yeah, that's about it.
That's good to know. And that, I mean, and of course, like the common cloud provider, I mean, the common cloud provider framework is like our main ownership, right? I mean, that's.
Yep.
Okay, so Walter, you and I will try to have a follow-up with SIG API machinery and hopefully get Joel involved too. And yeah, I guess we'll just kind of see. That's probably going to be a long burn on getting a common controller manager, but I think it's a cool effort to get started. Now, just to pop back up the queue here, or pop back up the stack real quickly. We were in the middle of talking about the slide deck when we kind of got sidetracked off on this.
Oh, yeah, this is very relevant actually, because exactly what you're talking about, the figuring out what the future endeavors of the SIG are, as Chris was stating. I think in the, hey, join our party. We're all meeting at the tavern and going on an expedition. Are you a bard? Excellent. You need a cleric. Like this is the exact conversation that we'll want to kind of end on. It's like, make sure that
Need a necromancer.
people who, yeah, well, we'll see how much dead code we have to resurrect. But yeah, I think that that's going to be part of that conversation. But anyway, we don't have to spend all our time, and we're almost out of time on this meeting. But yeah, exactly. I assure you, I am in fact chaotic neutral. So we will, I hope, get the deck together before unfortunately, my hard stop is March 11th. I am getting on a plane March 12th and doing a little bit of vacationing before KubeCon. So
That sounds awesome.
in terms of needing to get deck done, March 11th is my hard stop, and I will not be at the next SIG Cloud Provider meeting because I will be on vacation. So
Okay. Well, let's just plan to get a brainstorming session next week. And I will definitely get some comments on the slide deck, and hopefully that'll
Great.
get us into a shape where, yeah, you're good for vacation and you both feel great about the presentation you're going to give.
I'm sure it'll be 100% ready to go well ahead of
awesome.
the conference.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I hear
Awesome.
from every speaker I talk to. That's how it goes, right?
Look, like
Well-
you're getting close to jinxing it now. So
The forcing
off a little
function
bit.
in my case is I have zero interest in working on a slide deck. I have zero time to work on a slide deck after I go on vacation. So whatever is going to be in the slide deck from my point of view, we're going to do by March 11th.
True.
Absolutely. We'll get it done.
Awesome.
Okay.
That's good.
Are there any other topics or things people would like to talk about? We had a real barn burner of a meeting today.
Good stuff.
Yeah, so going in 3, 2, 1. All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming out.
Thank
Great
you.
topics, and I guess we'll talk more in the future here.
All right. Take care.